Salvatore Mooney Sam Giancana, better known as Sam Giancana, was an American mobster and mob boss of the Chicago outfit from 1957 to 1966. Among his other nicknames were Momo, Sam the Cigar, and Sammy. Early life: Giancana was born as Salvatore Giangana in the patch on Chicago's west side to Italian-Sicilian immigrants from Partena, in the province of Trapani. His father, Antonino Giangana, owned a pushcart and later briefly owned an Italian ice shop, which was later firebombed by gangland rivals of his son. Criminal career: Sam Giancana joined the 42 Gang, a juvenile street crew answering to political boss Joseph Esposito. Giancana soon developed a reputation for being an excellent getaway driver, a high earner, and a vicious killer. After Esposito's murder, in which Giancana was allegedly involved, the 42 Gang was transformed into a de facto extension of the Chicago outfit. The outfit was initially wary of the 42ers, thinking them too wild. However, Giancana's leadership qualities, the fact that he was an excellent wheelman with a getaway car and his knack for making money on the street gained him the notice of Cosa Nostra higher-ups like Frank the Enforcer Nitti, Paul the Waiter Ricca and Tony Joe Battizaccardo. In the late 1930s, Giancana became the first 42er to join the outfit. Family: Sam married Angelina de Tolve, the daughter of immigrants from the Italian region of Basilicata, on September 23, 1933. They had 3 daughters, Antoinette, Bonnie and Francine. Angelina died in 1954 and left Sam to raise his daughters. Sam never remarried after becoming a widower and was known as a good family man, despite frequent infidelities, and held his late wife in high regard and respect during their marriage and after her death. All of the Giancana daughters have married at least once. As of 1984, at least one daughter, Antoinette, had taken the Giancana name again. Rise to power: in 1945, after serving a sentence at the Federal Correctional Complex, Terre Haute, Indiana, Giancana made a name for himself by convincing Accardo, then the outfit's underboss, to stage a takeover of Chicago's African-American policy payout system for the outfit. Giancana's crew is believed to have been responsible for convincing Eddie Jones to leave his racket and leave the country. Giancana's crew was also responsible for the murder on August 4, 1952 of African-American gambling boss Theodore Rowe. Both Jones and Rowe were leading South Side policy kings. However, Rowe had refused the surrender control of his operation as the outfit had demanded. What is more, on June 19, 1951, Rowe had fatally shot Leonard "Fat Lenny" Caifano, a made man in Giancana's crew. Over an FBI wiretap during the early 1970s, Giancana said of Rowe, "I'll say this. Nigger or no nigger, that bastard went out like a man. He had balls. It was a fucking shame to kill him." However, the South Side policy game takeover by the outfit was not complete until another outfit member, Jackie the Lackey Cerrone, scared Big Jim Martin to Mexico with 2 bullets to the head that did not kill him. When the lottery money started rolling in for the outfit after this gambling war, the amount that this game had produced for the outfit was in the millions of dollars a year and brought Giancana further notice. It is believed to have been a major factor in his being anointed as the outfit's new boss when Accardo stepped aside from being the front boss to becoming consigliere, in 1957. However, it was generally understood that Accardo and Ricca still held the real power. Giancana was required to consult Accardo and Ricca on all important outfit affairs. No major business transactions, and certainly no hits, took place without Accardo and Ricca's approval. Giancana was present at the Mafia's 1957 Appalachian meeting at the upstate New York estate of Joseph Barbara. Later, Buffalo crime boss Stefano Magaddino and Giancana were overheard on a wire saying the meeting should have taken place in the Chicago area. Giancana claimed that the Chicago area was the safest place in the world for a major underworld meeting because he had several police chiefs on his payroll. If the syndicate ever wanted to hold a meeting in or around Chicago, Giancana said, they had nothing to fear because they had the area locked up tight. Alleged CIA connections: it is widely reputed and partially corroborated by the Church Committee hearings, that during the Kennedy administration, the Central Intelligence Agency recruited Giancana and other mobsters to assassinate Cuban President Fidel Castro. Giancana reportedly said that the CIA and the Cosa Nostra were different sides of the same coin. Judith Campbell Kushner claimed to be the mistress to both Giancana and JFK and that she delivered communications between the two regarding Fidel Castro. However, Giancana's daughter, Antoinette, has stated her belief that her father was running a scam in order to pocket millions of dollars in CIA funding. Documents released in 1997 revealed that some mafiosi worked with the CIA on assassination attempts against Cuban leader Fidel Castro. CIA documents released in 2007 confirmed that in the summer of 1960, the CIA recruited ex-FBI agent Robert Momo to approach the West Coast representative of the Chicago mob, Johnny Rossley. When Momo contacted Rossley, Momo hid the fact that he was sent by the CIA, instead portraying himself an advocate for international corporations. He offered to pay $150,000 to have Castro killed, but Rossley declined any pay. Rossley introduced Momo to two men he referred to as Sam Gold and Joe. Sam Gold was Sam Giancana. Joe was Santo Trafficante, Jr., the Tampa, Florida boss and one of the most powerful mobsters in pre-revolution Cuba. Glenn Kessler of The Washington Post explained, after Fidel Castro led a revolution that toppled a friendly government in 1959, the CIA was desperate to eliminate him. So the agency sought out a partner equally worried about Castro, the Mafia, which had lucrative investments in Cuban casinos. Jimmy Hoffa, president of the Teamsters Union, and mobsters Carlos Marcello, Sam Giancana, Johnny Rossley, Charles Nicoletti, and Santo Trafficante Jr. all of whom say Hoffa worked with the CIA on the Castro assassination plots top the list of House Select Committee on Assassination's Mafia suspects. According to the recently declassified CIA Family Jewels documents, Giancana and Tampa Miami syndicate leader Santo Trafficante, Jr. were contacted in September 1960, about the possibility of an assassination attempt by a go-between from the CIA, Robert Momo, after Momo had contacted Johnny Rossley, a Mafia member in Las Vegas and Giancana's number two man. Momo had presented himself as a representative of numerous international business firms in Cuba that were being expropriated by Castro. He offered $150,000 for the removal of Castro through this operation. According to the files, it was Giancana who suggested using a series of poison pills that could be used to doctor Castro's food and drink. These pills were given by the CIA to Giancana's nominee, Juan Orta, whom Giancana presented as being a corrupt official in the new Cuban government and who had access to Castro. After a series of 6 attempts to introduce the poison into Castro's food, Orta abruptly demanded to be let out of the mission, handing over the job to another, unnamed participant. Later, a second attempt was mounted through Giancana and Trafficante using Dr. Anthony Verona, the leader of the Cuban exile junta, who had, according to Trafficante, become disaffected with the apparent ineffectual progress of the junta. Verona requested $10,000 in expenses and $1,000 worth of communications equipment. However, it is unclear how far the second attempt went, as the entire program was cancelled shortly thereafter due to the launching of the Bay of Pigs invasion in April 1961. At the same time, Giancana, according to the Family Jewels, approached Momo to bug the room of his then-mistress Phyllis McGuire, whom he suspected of having an affair with comedian Dan Rowan. Although documents suggest Momo acquiesced, the bug was not planted due to the arrest of the agent who had been given the task of planting the device. According to the documents, Robert Kennedy moved to block the prosecution of the agent and Momo, who was soon linked to the bugging attempt, at the CIA's request. Giancana and McGuire, who had a long-lasting affair, were originally introduced by Frank Sinatra. During part of the affair, according to Sam's daughter Antoinette, McGuire had a concurrent affair with President Kennedy. Downfall: Giancana's behavior was too high-profile for outfit tastes and attracted far too much federal scrutiny. He also refused to cut his underlings in on his lavish profits from offshore casinos in Iran and Central America. Both of these factors resulted in much bitterness among the outfit's rank and file. Giancana was the subject of many hours of wiretaps. On one, he was heard to say, "We're whacking a lot of the wrong guys lately." When Giancana was called before a grand jury in 1966, he was ordered to stay silent, which put him in prison for over a year. Meanwhile, Giancana was deposed by Rica and Ricardo as day-to-day boss, and replaced by Joseph "Joey Doves" Iappa. International gambling success and dispute with the outfit. After arriving in Mexico, Giancana managed to make money from various gambling operations, among them in Iran. When Tony Ricardo demanded that he gave a share of the profits to the outfit, Giancana refused, claiming that he did it all by himself and outside the outfit's jurisdiction. In response, Ricardo asked someone to explain him the facts of life. "And I mean life." Giancana, however, remained adamant and refused to pay. Returned to Chicago in death, after about 7 years of exile inside a lavish villa in Cuernavaca, Mexico, Giancana was arrested by Mexican authorities in 1974 and deported to the United States. He arrived back in Chicago on July 21, 1974. Giancana had another seat down with the outfit with no resolution. The outfit requested him to give a share of his money and he refused. After his return to the U.S., the police detailed officers to guard his house in Oak Park, Illinois. However, on the night of June 19, 1975, someone recalled the police detail. A gunman later entered Giancana's basement kitchen and shot him in the back of the head as he was frying sausage and peppers. After Giancana fell to the ground, the gunman turned him over and shot him 6 more times in the face and neck. Investigators suspected that the murderer was a close friend whom Giancana had let into the house. One reason for this suspicion was that Giancana, due to his heart problems, could not eat spicy foods. Therefore, he might have been cooking for a friend. Giancana was killed shortly before he was scheduled to appear before a U.S. Senate committee investigating CIA and Cosa Nostra collusion in plots to assassinate President John F. Kennedy. Hitman Nicholas Calabres told the FBI in the 2000s that he knew that Tony Ricardo was part of the killing and Angelo LaPietra got rid of the gun. The gun used to kill Giancana was equipped with a silencer that Frank Calabres, Sr. and Ronnie Jarrett had made. Earlier speculations as to how Giancana died, some commentators have alleged that the CIA killed Giancana because of his troubled history with the agency. However, former CIA Director William Colby has been quoted as saying, "We had nothing to do with it." Another theory is that Trafficante crime family boss Santo Trafficante, Jr. ordered Giancana's murder due to mob fears that Giancana would testify about Cosa Nostra and CIA plots to kill Cuban President Fidel Castro. Trafficante would have needed permission from outfit bosses Tony Ricardo and Joseph Iappa to kill Giancana. Johnny Rosselli, whose body was found stuffed in an oil drum floating off Miami, was definitely killed on Trafficante's orders. Most investigators believe that Iappa ordered the Giancana murder. Giancana was still refusing to share any of his offshore gambling profits with the outfit. In addition, Giancana was reportedly scheming to become outfit boss again. According to former Mafia associate Michael J. Corbett, Iappa seized control of Giancana's casinos in the aftermath of the murder, strategically sharing them with his capo James. Longtime friend and associate Dominic Butch Blasi was with Giancana the night he was murdered, and was questioned by police as a suspect. FBI experts and Giancana's daughter, Antoinette, do not consider him Giancana's killer. Other Mafia suspects are Harry Ailman, Charles Chucky English, and Charles Nicoletti. In the 1995 movie Cigar Time, Dominic Butch Blasi, as portrayed by Elias Koteas, is shown murdering Giancana. Giancana was interred next to his wife, Angelina, in a family mausoleum at Mount Carmel Cemetery, in Hillside, Illinois. Michael J. Corbett's account, within days of Giancana's murder, Willow Springs Police Chief and outfit associate Michael J. Corbett discussed the murder with Capo Salvatore Barstone. Barstone told him, "You know, Sam sure loved that little guy in Oak Park. Tony Spilotro. Yeah, he was fucking crazy about him. Sam put Tony on the fucking map, thought he was gonna be a big fucking man someday. Did you know that after Marshall Caifano got out of Vegas, it was Sam who wanted Tony Spilotro out there? Even lately, with all the problems with the skim and all, Sam always stood behind the guy. Tony was over to Sam's house all the time. He lived right by there. Did you know Tony even figured out a way where he could get in through the back of Sam's place without anybody seeing him? He'd go through other people's yards, go over fences, all sorts of shit. Corbett responded, Sam wouldn't open the door for just any son of a bitch. I mean there's Butch, Chucky English. He'd let them in all right, but shit, no way they'd ever do anything to hurt Sam. No way. Barstone then said, yeah, Sam and Butch were real close. And the same thing with him and Chucky. Besides, neither one of them had the balls to do something like that. There's only one guy that had the balls to do Sam. When Corbett asked for the reason, Barstone quipped, there's never just one reason for shit like what happened to Sam. There's a million of them. Let's just say that Sam should have remembered what happened to Bugsy Siegel. In popular culture, Giancana is the subject of the biography Mafia Princess, written by his daughter Antoinette. This book was later adapted into the 1986 TV film Mafia Princess, starring Tony Curtis as Giancana. The 1995 TV film Cigar depicts Giancana's relationship with singer Phyllis McGuire of the McGuire Sisters, with Giancana being played by John Turturro. Rod Steiger portrayed Giancana in the 1992 TV miniseries Sinatra. Robert Miranda played Giancana in the 1998 TV film, The Rat Pack. Influential mafioso rapper Kool G Rap once stated that the G in his name stands for Giancana. Kool G Rap released an album in 2002 called The Giancana Story. Giancana plays a major role in James Ellroy's fiction, most notably American Tabloid and its sequels The Cold 6000 and Bloods Are Over. Giancana is a central figure in the Max Allan Collins novels Chicago Confidential and Road to Paradise. Giancana is a character in the Robert Randazzi Rat Pack novels. News footage of Giancana is featured in the film JFK. Giancana is portrayed under the name Joseph Palmy in the 2006 film, The Good Shepherd, starring Matt Damon. Palmy may be a mix of the several other mobsters involved with the operation. Matt Damon's character, Edward Wilson, is depicted in proposing Palmy to assist in the assassination of Fidel Castro. Giancana is mentioned in the song Dope Money by The Lox. Bring drama 'cause Giancana got Kennedy killed. Dope Money is song number 6, on the LOX's second album, Ride or Die Volume 1. Giancana played a major role in the 1965 J.X. Williams film Peep Show and has a personal performance credit for this on the IMDb movie database. Giancana may be mentioned in the Shine song Edge on his second album Godfather Buried Alive. Fuck, raps, Sam Giancana, although this is sometimes rendered as Sam Giancana. The fictional character Louis Russo from The Godfather Returns by Mark Weiner-Gardner could be based on Sam Giancana. The character Mob Man from the X-Files episode Musings of a Cigarette-Smoking Man is likely based on Giancana, who is present at a planning meeting on the assassination of JFK. Giancana is a notable character in Norman Mailer's historical fiction Harlot's Ghost. Serge Hood portrays Giancana as a major nemesis of the Kennedy family in the 2011 television miniseries The Kennedys. Giancana features in the first episode of UK History TV channel Yesterday's documentary series Mafia's Greatest Hits. The fictional character Sam in the novel The Outlaw Sandra Love is based on Giancana. See also: Assassination attempts on Fidel Castro, notes. References. Further reading. External links: Sam Giancana at Encyclopaedia Britannica, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Freedom of Information Privacy Act, Sam Giancana, Seize the Night, Sam Momo Giancana, Sam Giancana at Find a Grave.